I love it when we come together. It only happens a few times a year across all of our 3 worshiping communities. And, all of us have to stretch a little bit in order to be together, the different styles of music, the different theological themes in the music and things like that. But it's worth it. I think it is worth it for us to be able to be together and to cherish one another and know that there is truly a love that's beyond all of our belief and all of our expressions and all of our music. There is a love that is greater, that holds us all together. And that each one of our services on Sunday morning may be distinct in different ways, but each one is its own expression of love beyond belief. So I've been gone now for about 6 weeks, and it's been a great summer around here. How do I know that? I know that because 14 people joined the congregation last Sunday. So that was fantastic. Now, Reverend Barbara Prose back here was the acting senior minister this summer. Isn't she great? I think wonderful. And she will be great to dunk in the dunk tank after church right out there on the front lawn. So don't miss out on that opportunity. Also, we heard from Reverend Gerald Davis and from David Ruffin this summer. Rabbi Micah Citron from Temple Israel was here last week. I understand delivered a wonderful, wonderful spirited message for us. And then throughout the summer, we had a lineup of speakers from the community on hot topics in the point. So it sounds like it's just been a great summer. And 14 people joined the congregation last Sunday. Do you know what people tell me all the time who find this church? They say, I had no idea such a community existed. And had I known this earlier in my life, it would have changed my life. Some people say, I had no idea that there would be a church that I would ever want to attend. I was thinking that we could use that as a slogan. The church that even people who don't like church like to attend. But I think that one's already being used somewhere around the country. But what I've come to see is that All Souls is an oasis. It's an oasis in a desert of Christian fundamentalism and orthodoxy. All Souls is an oasis of free thinkers. An oasis, you probably know, is a place in the desert that is fed by an underground stream or a spring that allows people who are crossing the desert to find some nourishment in order to rejuvenate and often to survive. Without an oasis, some people would die. Certain deserts are uncrossable without an oasis. All Souls is an oasis. We live in a state that is dominated by people who think that their religious perspective is the one and only right perspective. That their religion is the one and only religion ordained by God, and who feel that their mission is to convert and convince everyone else that they're right. And if we think differently from them, that we're wrong. It's exhausting living amongst these people sometimes. I've been away. You have to understand, I've been away. I just came back. People have already asked me what church I go to. Am I saved? Never got asked once when I was outside of Oklahoma all summer. No one ever asked me that once. I come back here and I can't go shopping without somebody asking me. Now, many of these fine folks won't accept gay and lesbian people and families. Many don't accept certain women's legal rights and are working to restrict them. Some seem determined to place their religious symbols on public property. I like to walk into All Souls sometimes just so that I can say, I do not believe the Bible, word for word, is God's single and exclusive plan for humanity, without anybody jumping my case and trying to tell me that I'm wrong, or worse, that I'm going to hell. I like being surrounded by agnostics and Buddhists and Jews and mystics of all kinds and people who are questioning and thinking deeply about matters of faith and conscience and spirituality. I like being around Christians who are open-minded about other perspectives and who do not make an idol out of the Bible or out of Jesus. I find being around a diverse group of people and perspectives, it's healthy and it enriches my life and it sharpens my thinking. So for me, All Souls is an oasis in a desert of extremism and religious fundamentalism. But it's more than that. It's also an oasis in a storm. When tragedy strikes or hard times come, I want to be around people who do not have a religious or other agenda other than helping me find my way back to wholeness. I don't want to be around people who would exploit my tragedy for their own purposes or their own theology. When my family lost our second child some years ago, you should have heard the hurtful things that people said that came out of their own unfortunate theologies. Things like, God must have needed another little girl up there in heaven. Yuck. I mean, apparently, some people really believe in a God who gets lonely and routinely kills children so that he can have another child with him in heaven. I want to kill that God. Seriously. I want to do whatever I can to help challenge people who think like that to come up with a more compassionate and loving idea of God. I hope you do too. People say things like, it's all part of God's plan. And I want to say, how do you know, smarty pants? But they would likely say, because it's written in the Bible. Have you read the Bible? As if the Bible is not full of contradictions and debatable translations. Now, understand, the Bible is my favorite scripture. It's probably my favorite book, filled with wonderful stories, poetry, prayers, and so much more. Filled with some of the most humble and flawed characters of any literature of any time, who I can really relate to. And yet, if people think they see in there some clear and definable plan from God, then I have to say they haven't read the Bible very closely. It's a lot more complicated than all of that. And many of them believe, therefore, that God has a plan. And apparently this plan includes child abduction, school shootings, war, hunger, malnutrition, and every other malady and tragedy that happens down here on earth. It makes me wonder, what kind of gods are people willing to worship? And why are they so intent on trying to push their idea of God on the rest of us? So All Souls is truly an oasis. It is a place where we can be honest about what we believe and don't believe. It is a place for mystics to explore their relationship with God and spirit. It's a place for agnostics to question the existence of God and yet be living lives of meaning and purpose in community. It's a place for all of us to discover what we really believe without coercion, without dogmas and creeds and right beliefs that are being taught to us and told to us and for us to be asked to memorize. A couple of people who joined just last Sunday, who attend the Point service, our humanist service each week, explained that they would have never normally come to church. They tend to see and hang out with people who see organized religion as a problem and not a solution. But once they came here and started to see what actually happens here, they started to attend regularly. Once they realized other members would really not insist that they believe in God if they didn't, especially not a God that looks like a man with a beard. Not that there's anything wrong with a man with a beard. wearing a robe up in the clouds. But once they realized that they'd really be accepted as atheists and agnostics, and that others would accept Buddhists and people of various beliefs, people questioning, people trying to figure it out, people trying to pull together different understandings of truth and wisdom from different traditions, they realized that this was a community that they could belong to and that they wanted to belong to. And so they joined. One of them said, "Young people just don't know how cool it is." That could be another slogan. All souls, you don't know how cool it is. Now, I can't imagine Tulsa without All Souls. And I know if you're here or if you're one of the 3,000 to 4,000 people who tune in online every month to our services, that you have your own story of how All Souls has been an oasis for you. There's a famous Zen Buddhist story that tells about two people who are traveling through the desert, and they're becoming seriously close to dying of hunger and thirst. And finally, they come to a high wall, and on the other side, they can hear the sounds of a waterfall and birds singing, and they can see over the top branches of a lush trees covered in delicious fruit. One of them manages to climb right over the wall and disappears down the other side. The other instead returns to the desert to help other travelers find their way to the oasis, knowing that they are out there too. In Buddhism, it's a story that tries to describe the disagreement between the Hinayana and the Mahayana Buddhists, the former who feel that a person can only gain enlightenment for him or herself, and that personal enlightenment is the ultimate and final goal of the Buddhist path. And the later group, which includes Zen, believe that there's a higher calling, and it's not just to be concerned about our own enlightenment, but to have the goal of helping others to reach enlightenment as well. So I share this story today in the context of All Souls because I see this as an oasis for both kinds of travelers. Some of us arrive here or arrive at some point in our lives where we need the nourishing ministry of All Souls for ourselves. We need it to survive what's happening to us or whatever we're facing. And in these times, we jump over the wall into this place and we swim and we drink the life-giving waters of this community. And yet there's also an important function for those of us who know how spiritually deadening and dehydrating it can be living in this desert of extremism here in Oklahoma. And we feel called to let others who are struggling travelers know that there is an oasis here for people like them. Let us share the healing waters of this place without apology. Now, I realize that most of us, because we've been living here, have been confronted by people coming up to us and trying to get us to come to their church. And we don't want to be people like that, many of us. But remember that we are offering here a very, very different experience for people. And nearly everyone who finds us says, "I wish I would have known about this place much earlier. It would have changed my life." So we've been accused of hiding our light under a bushel, or today, with our theme, we might say hiding our water from those who are thirsty for religious freedom. I'm seriously considering getting a billboard or doing a campaign that says, "All Souls, an oasis of reason and spirit in a land of fundamentalism." Because I know that there are people out there who are dying of spiritual hunger and thirsting for a real community. These are people who don't want to just sit around waiting for the next mass shooting, waiting for a climate change disaster, waiting for the next black life to end unnecessarily, waiting for women's rights to their bodies to be restricted and denied, waiting while schools are stripped of their resources, more and more resources. And we want a community of people who are willing to stand up in the religious arena and explain persuasively and boldly that the moral issues of our times are not gay marriage and abortion, but include the takeover of our democracy by billionaires and corporations, obscene CEO pay, and the theft of living wages from ordinary people. The real moral crisis is that people are not just spiritually, but literally dying out there. And they are wondering, where are the people who care? We need a way to point them to this place, the life-giving and life-saving waters of All Souls. People who can help strengthen our witness and our advocacy and help us to change this society. Now, you may be the only person and the only chance a person will ever have to hear about this place, at least to hear about it in a positive way. I hope you realize the power that you have to change and even to save people's lives just by telling them about this oasis in the desert. In our Simple Gifts painting, which is out in the foyer, which explains and describes what All Souls is and what we mean and where we come from, the water in the vase represents God, or the interdependent web of all life, which is another way that some people will say, refer to God or what is greatest in life, that interdependent web of all life. Water has come to symbolize this because water is a requirement for all life. There can be no life without water. Our bodies are made up mostly of water. Water has no color, no shape of its own. It takes the shape of whatever it's in. We cannot live very long without water. Barbara Prose, when she describes this painting, she likes to remind us that water also comes in many forms: lakes, rivers, waterfalls, snow, ice. Just as the reality we call God or Spirit is manifest in different traditions and has different shapes and purposes, beliefs, sounds, colors, and more. And our shared goal is to draw from many traditions, from our lives, from other people and places, from academic learning and the arts, that which is life-giving, life-sustaining, like plain water. In these days when clean water is becoming more scarce and droughts more common, in these days of rigid religious ideology and divisive politics, may All Souls continue to be an oasis for the Spirit in this city, in this nation, in this world. An oasis of love beyond belief. And to the 14 members who joined while I was away, welcome. I'm so glad you found us. Amen.
Thanks for tuning in online. We are so pleased with all the different people who have been tuning in from all over the country and all over the world to our ministry and what we're doing at All Souls here in Tulsa. If you have a chance to send me an email or connect with me in some way, let me know what you're finding, why you tune in, and what you're getting out of it. I would love to hear from you. I'm always pleased when I get messages from different people who tell me all kinds of things about the impact of All Souls Tulsa's ministry on them and their lives and their families. And if you get a chance to make a gift to support this ministry, to become a partner, we would love to partner with you and have you be a friend of the church and somebody who is actually supporting us to create this congregation and the world that we're trying to create together. You can be a part of it, and every gift of every amount makes a difference. We really appreciate your support.